Now we are joined by Professor at Tehran University, Dr. Foad Izadi, live from Tehran. Thank you for joining us. Iran has announced this pause in retaliatory attacks, while the US has also paused strikes. Is this a genuine opportunity for diplomacy, do you think, or is this just another temporary lull?
It looks like something temporary because we don't see any evidence that the United States is changing policy. The United States attacked Iran 3 times in the middle of negotiations, once in June last year, once in February this year, and once just a few weeks ago. We had this MOU. They were supposed to talk for 60 days, and the US started shooting before the 30th day. And Trump has gotten himself in this quagmire. He thought that he can overthrow the Iranian government. He has been saying from the first week of the war that he has destroyed the Iranian military totally. Obviously, that is not an accurate statement. And he doesn't know what to do because he cannot defeat Iran and he cannot justify this war. The United States, according to the Pentagon, has spent more than $37 billion. We have had 18 people, American soldiers, killed. There is no justification for all this cost. So they need to show something for what they have done, and they cannot do that. And they are desperate in reaching some sort of an agreement with Iran, but they don't want to do that at the same time. They don't want to recognize the fact that this is a failed policy. The word quagmire is very much useful when it comes to U.S. foreign policy in this part of the world.
And who would you say is more desperate for diplomacy, the United States or Iran?
Iran wants diplomacy. Iran was not interested in fighting the United States. The U.S. spends 100 times more on its military in comparison to U.S. and to Iran. Iran is obviously underdog. If you are weaker in terms of military, you don't want to be fighting a bigger military. And an agreement was available before this latest round of attacks. And the U.S. thinks that they can get the goals that they have by repeating this mistaken policy, pausing for a while and then attacking and then pausing. So Iran wants diplomacy, but we don't see any evidence that the other side is interested in true negotiations, in true diplomacy. When they talk about diplomacy, they generally do deception operations in order to achieve the goals that are not going to be achieved.
And what about the talks with Oman? How significant is that development?
Under international law, the UN Convention on Law of Seas, the coastal states have rights when it comes to ships passing through waterways. And the state of Hormuz has 2 coastal states. One is Iran, one is Oman. United States is not a coastal state to a state of Hormuz. U.S. is 11,000 kilometers away. U.S. is a coastal state to Gulf of Mexico. They can follow international law when it comes to Gulf of Mexico, but they have no rights in this part of the world. And one of the U.S. aims is to control the state of Hormuz so they can charge the neighboring countries when their ships pass through. They want to use the straits to put pressure on countries like China and India. They don't like large, powerful countries. And they think that they can reverse this run towards decline by taking over the resources of other nations. And the fact that Iran and Oman are reaching an agreement on how to manage the Strait of Hormuz is good news. And if they can reach an agreement, and the Omani side is under a lot of pressure by the United States. Last month, Trump talked about bombing Oman, and we have unconfirmed reports that Omani assets in American banks are frozen to put pressure on the Omani government. Hopefully, Omanis can withstand these pressures, reach an agreement with Iran, and once that happens, then the U.S. has no say in what goes on in the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is in territorial waters of Iran and Oman, not in territorial waters of United States.
Well, if the United States has no say, according to you, we know that the shipping that's going through the Strait of Hormuz affects the globe. So what gives Iran and Oman a right to control what happens in the rest of the world?
It's called international law. Article 17 of the UN Charter on Law of Seas talks about ships passing, but it says innocent passage. And in Article 19, it defines what innocent is. Innocent means that the ships that pass through should not threaten the security of the coastal states. Iran has been attacked illegally by the United States and Israel. Under Article 51 of the UN Charter, Iran has the right and the responsibility to respond. And Iran wants to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz is not used again by the United States to attack Iran again. And this is international law. Innocent passage, normal ships are not going to have any difficulties going through the Strait of Hormuz. American ships, Israeli ships, they are not going to be allowed, and Iran will make sure that the management of this strait is going to be done in a manner to make sure that the strait is not used to harm Iranian people. We have lost over 3,500 civilians already. The fact that international ships pass through a waterway doesn't make that waterway international. You live in cities, I don't know where you are based, but generally in larger cities you have tourists coming and going. The fact that a city sees a lot of tourists doesn't make that city an international city. That city still belongs to the country where that city is located. And the same thing is true with waterways. These are Omani and Iranian territorial waters, and they will make sure that these waters are not going to be used to create wars again. And United States wanted to create an American corridor. This is how the latest round of attacks on Iran started, and they were not able to do that, and they will not be able to do that. The hope that we have is that they realize this fact, realize this is a failed policy, change course. It's about time.
And now that Iran and Oman are speaking, do you think the Americans can still maintain this so-called naval blockade that they say they have there?
You know, Trump called the U.S. Navy pirates, which is an accurate description, actually. They shoot at ships that pass through. They have done this blockade, which under international law is an act of war. They do a lot of illegal things. But one thing the Iranian side realizes is that the U.S. cannot continue this policy for a long time. So the idea that Iranians have is to resist. There is a resistance in Iran until the other side realizes that this is a failed policy. I don't think they have realized that yet, but as time goes through and as the number of U.S. casualties increase and as U.S. bases are hit more, I think sooner or later the Americans will realize that they need to change course.
And looking ahead, what do you think are the developments that we should be watching out for over the next few days and weeks?
You know, I think the talks between Iran and Oman are going to be important, the results of those talks. Of course, we have this elephant in the room. It's called the United States. They want to push Oman to not have an agreement with Iran because they realize if that happens, it would be more difficult for the Americans to control the Strait of Hormuz. And this is what they want to do. So that is going to be important. I think, as you reported, the United States has limitations with regard to these missiles that they have run out because they have used them in their war against Iran. The Israelis have used a lot of them. They did a genocide in Gaza, so they have been engaging in these warfares for more than 2 years now. they have limitations. This war in the United States is not popular. Majority of Americans oppose this war. There are a lot of people in the U.S. Congress that oppose this war. I think these developments will lead to Trump realizing that he has made a huge mistake.
Dr. Foad Izadi, we always appreciate your contribution. Thank you.